Alabama Nation, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson of BamaInsider.com. This is the BamaInsider.com podcast coming to you on Friday, September 15th. Got a great show lined up for you today. Going to be speaking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com to talk recruiting. Going to also talk with team writer Tony Sakalis, get you the latest team scoop. Now, I wanted to open up today's program, as I always do, with some interesting stat lines, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I wanted to talk about an article that I wrote recently, and it's getting a lot of feedback. I'm getting a lot of emails regarding it. The article was Alabama fans are not appreciating Jalen Hurts. And, you know, I wrote this because when I moved to Tuscaloosa, I would imagine that Jalen Hurts returning for a sophomore season, that everybody would be extremely fired up that, you know, as a sophomore, you know, he's coming back and he would have progressed so much into the season after leading Alabama to a 14-1 season as a true freshman. But I've been really surprised at the amount of criticism that he continues to receive. Now, it's not everybody, but it's a good majority that really is just not satisfied with Jalen Hurts weekly. And we're talking about somebody who off the field has great character, but on the field, when the lights come on, he's been exceptional. I mean, as a true starter, his record is 15-1, and that's playing at Alabama at the highest level for the last two seasons. Alabama, as you know, 2-0, ranked number 1 in the country in the coaches poll and the AP poll. Last week, Jalen ran for 154 yards, threw for 120 yards, and after the game, on the message boards and on social media, people still criticizing his lack of deep ball ability, that he doesn't stay in the pocket and go through his progression, and that he's too quick to escape the pocket to pick up yards. I get that. You know, people want perfection from the quarterback position, and the quarterback position is always going to be under the microscope. However, Jalen wins, and he's a team player, and the team follows him. And he does exactly what Nick Saban asks him to do every single week, which is to execute. Here's an email that I got recently. Your recent article insults everyone's intelligence. Alabama fans are very passionate and informed, so there are many reasons why their criticism is valid. I can't stand Jalen Hurts. What you're missing in all of this is that he is not playing with an ordinary team. You put any quarterback with a Bama roster and they're going to be successful. It's obvious when watching him that he is only succeeding to a small degree because of his enormous talent that surrounds him. You put him on any other team and he falls flat on his face. That's an email that I just got today. And I get where you're coming from in terms of, you know, that fans are passionate and informed, but I think this guy is completely wrong. I mean, I think if you put Jalen Hurts on any other team in college football, that team succeeds and passes expectations because Jalen, number one, is a person of character. He leads by example. And on the field, his play is very dynamic. I mean, this is a day and age where you need a dual threat quarterback. And Jalen Hurts provides just that with his running ability and his passing ability. Now, he threw a 53-yard touchdown in week 1 against Florida State. He threw 24-yard touchdown passes last week against Fresno State. I mean, and in fact, against Fresno State, did you know this? He had the second highest quarterback rating in NCAA out of all the teams, 97.8. Second highest, and people are still criticizing him. At one point during the game, he was 10 of 11 passing. Kid was on fire, including a 55-yard touchdown run. So I think this guy's missing the point. I think, you know, they're trying to find something wrong with him. And until we really see him start to lose a string of games or even more than one game, can we really then criticize Jalen Hurts? That's my soapbox to open up the show. Just wanted to talk about that article because I've received a lot of response from it. And I think it's prevalent to talk about Jalen Hurts, Alabama football, and excited to see what he can do on Saturday against the Colorado State Rams. Alabama versus Colorado State will be September 16th, Saturday, 6 p.m. Central Time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Last week, 101,000 came out to see Alabama defeat Fresno State 41-10. TV is ESPN2. Radio, of course, is the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Inside the series, overall, this is the second meeting between Alabama and Colorado State. Alabama leads 1-0. Last meeting was on September 21st, 2013, with Alabama winning 31-6. Additional series notes provided by the University of Alabama. Alabama and Colorado State will meet for the second time in history of the two programs this weekend. The Tide's first meeting with Colorado State was 31-6 in favor of Alabama, defeating Colorado State on September 21st in Alabama's home opener at Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Crimson Tide is 7-1 all-time, 5-1 after vacations against current members of the Mountain West Conference. Alabama head coach Nick Saban is 4-1 all-time against Mountain West Conference teams, including a 3-0 mark with the Crimson Tide. The Tide defeated Fresno State last weekend 41-10 last Saturday in its most recent meeting with the Mountain West Conference team. In the other meeting with the current Mountain West team, under Saban, Alabama posted a 48-3 win over San Jose State in 2010. More interesting stats going into this weekend's game. The friendly confines of Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama has won 28 of its last 29 games in its home stadium. Last loss comes all the way back in 2015. Before that, it was all the way back to 2012 against Texas A&M. First-time starters. The Crimson Tide had 4 student athletes make their first career start versus Fresno State, all on defense. Making their first starts were defensive lineman Raekwon Davis, linebackers Keith Holcomb and Jamie Mosley, and defensive back Levi Wallace. 8 student athletes made their first career start in season opening contests against Florida State, including 2 on offense, 3 on defense, and 2 specialists. Getting their first start career-wise on offense was tight end Irv Smith and offensive tackle Matt Womack. Making their first start on defense was defensive back Trayvon Diggs, linebacker Anthony Jennings, and defensive lineman Isaiah Buggs. Place kicker Andy Papanastis, along with long snapper Scott Mayer and Thomas Fletcher, started for the first time on spot. Leading Alabama on offensive yards, quarterback Jalen Hurts leads the team in rushing, 25 carries for 209 yards with 2 touchdowns. Damian Harrison second, 15 carries, 105 yards on the season, also with 2 touchdowns. In third, Bo Scarborough, 21 carries, 76 yards. True freshman Najee Harris, 16 carries for 75 yards. Leading the team in receptions, Calvin Ridley, 12 receptions, 127 yards with 1 touchdown. Cam Sims, who recorded 3 receptions against Fresno State for 28 yards. Xavier Marks, 1 reception for 24 yards. Robert Foster, 2 receptions for 23 yards. Alabama quarterback Jalen Hurts on the season, 24 for 36 passing with 2 touchdowns. That's a completion percentage of 66.7 for 224 yards with 2 touchdowns. Backup quarterback Tua Tagovailoa saw time last week for his first time in his career. He was 6 for 9 passing, 66.7% completion, same as Jalen Hurts, for 64 yards and a touchdown. I have some defensive stats for you as well. Leading the team in total tackles is Rodney Harrison with 13 total tackles. He had 8 against Fresno State. Anthony Averett has 10 tackles on the season with 1 interception. Deron Payne has 9 tackles. Sean Dion Hamilton also has 9 tackles, as well as Raekwon Davis, who had 8 tackles last year on the season. He has 9 tackles. Tuscaloosa native Keith Holcomb has 7 tackles, as well as Minka Fitzpatrick and Mac Wilson. Hootie Jones has 6 tackles. Rashawn Evans and Terrell Lewis both have 5 tackles, and of course didn't play last week because both are injured. All right, now we bring into the program Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com, our recruiting analyst who lives in the lovely city of Birmingham, Alabama. What's up, Bone?
Hey, what's up, Kyle? How you doing this week, man?
Good, man. How's the recruiting board? Is it I know that recruiting is somewhat slow, but since the transition of the Talk of Champions to creating your own message board, what's that atmosphere like?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to realize that we have a separate message board for just recruiting, and I think a lot of people are really enjoying it. You know, we just had the recruiting Q&A posted on Wednesday, and people are still asking questions. And if you haven't been on there yet, I recommend get on there, ask some questions, or at least read the comments, or read all the answers that I've posted so far on several top Alabama targets and what's going on in the recruiting world. But yeah, it's been pretty active over the last really since the beginning of football season has started. We kind of kicked it off towards the end of the summer, and we had a lot of traffic over there. But now with football season and everybody coming over to the board to check out what's going on with the team this year, everyone's jumping on the recruiting board as well, and hopefully things are going to start picking up. We'll see what happens over the course of the next few weeks, few months, but obviously still kind of slow right now in terms of number of commitments, but Alabama on the recruiting trail, going to games every Friday night, going to see top kids, evaluating targets. Now they're going to see guys who are considered their premier targets, but they're also evaluating guys who could potentially get offers down the road. And I think they're keeping an eye on a lot of guys, a lot of potential guys who could get offered, maybe after the season. So we'll keep a pretty close eye on that.
So to access the message boards, if you're listening, you have the Talk of Champions forum, which is basically your team forum, and then you have Andrew Bone's Alabama recruiting board. So we've split that up because there's just so much traffic on the website. So we want to make sure that you're able to get to the message boards. But let's get into it, man. It's tomorrow on Friday, September 15th. Vernon Jackson, big-time target out of Texas, is supposed to commit. Now, he was supposed to commit a couple weeks ago, and then he changed his date, and then we had, Hurricane Harvey swoop into the Houston area, so that kind of prolonged his commitment as well. But it looks like tomorrow could be the day that Vernon Jackson officially commits. So what's your latest take, and kind of give us some background on Vernon Jackson?
Yeah, like you said, Vernon Jackson had to push his commitment back because of Hurricane Harvey hitting the Houston area. He's kind of right outside Houston, and so he had to push things back just a few weeks. It looks like he's ready to decide on Friday, and it looks like it's going to be Alabama. Just talking to different people out in Texas, talking to people kind of around the Alabama program, I feel really confident that he's going to choose the Crimson Tide. Now it's between Texas A&M, TCU, and Alabama. He visited Alabama a few times. He was at the Champions Cookout back in July. He attended an 8A game. He's a big kid. He's 6'3", about 245 pounds. He actually plays quarterback for his high school team. Had a tremendous junior season where he rushed for more than 2,000 yards. Had over 1,000 yards passing, but Alabama's recruiting him for the defensive side of the ball. They like him a lot, linebacker. I think he can play inside or outside. I think the best comparison probably is Chris Allen, Alabama freshman linebacker from Louisiana. Very similar to him in terms of just his athleticism, his size, his speed. But Alabama coaches are really big fans of Vernon Jackson. They've liked him a lot for a long time. It's always kind of been a big-time target for them. But come Friday, I think he's announcing at his pep rally at his high school, which still trying to work on a time, which we will provide on Bama Insider on the Alabama football recruiting board. At some point on Thursday, we will, and Friday morning, we'll have that time set for all the subscribers, but I definitely expect him to choose the Crimson Tide come Friday.
Wow, so that would be commitment number 11 for Alabama. Vernon Jackson does commit for Alabama, and as Andrew mentioned, we will have that information linked for you on the front page of BamaInsider.com. Speaking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com, he does a great job on our recruiting team side, and as we head into this Colorado State game, I know you usually post your lists of guys who are going to be in town, and I have a couple other questions that I want to ask you, but any big-time prospects coming into Tuscaloosa this weekend?
Well, we should have some big-time guys that are going to be down there. Some in-state guys. Should see Alabama commitment Jalen Davis up in Tuscaloosa for the first time this year. He wasn't able to make it to last week's home game. We should see several more commitments in town. We'll see who else makes it from in-state. Haven't gotten a complete list yet, but we're going to have that on BamaInsider.com at some point on Thursday. It will be posted on the Alabama football recruiting message board. We're going to have that complete list, but we should see more guys in Tuscaloosa this week. We had a great group of guys in Tuscaloosa last weekend. Conus Miller made a return trip to Tuscaloosa. You had a lot of 2019, 2020 guys that were in town. So Alabama was happy to get some some big names in Tuscaloosa. Clay Webb, 5-star offensive lineman from Oxford High School, #1 player in the state for 2019, was back in Tuscaloosa. So a lot of big time guys in Tuscaloosa last weekend for the home opener. But with this being a later kickoff, it's going to be easy for prospects, kind of from a little bit all over, making their way down to Tuscaloosa or up to Tuscaloosa for the game.
One guy I wanted to ask you about is Conus Miller, local guy, big time talent, defensive lineman. As you know, defensive linemen just they're not easy to come by. So guys of that caliber are important to land. What's your take on Conus Miller? And kind of give us the latest on him.
Well, I think with him deciding to hold off from announcing a decision before the start of the season, I think it really bodes well for Alabama because they're behind Florida, they're behind Auburn in his recruitment right now. But they have plenty of time to make up for it. I can remember years ago, Rashawn Evans didn't have Alabama in his top 7 going into the season. He had a lot of other schools, and Alabama just kept recruiting him, kept saying how big of a priority he was, and he ended up deciding to take an official visit, and then all of a sudden Alabama made it into that top 2, and then at the end on National Signing Day he announced for the Crimson Tide, which kind of shook a lot of people who expected him to go to Auburn. But Conus Miller is a big-time target for the Crimson Tide at a big position of need. Alabama's certainly hoping to sign 4, maybe even 5 defensive linemen in this year's recruiting class. It's like I said, a priority position. He's a priority target. He's an in-state target from Birmingham. So we'll just have to wait and see how things shape up. I mean, he has visited Alabama quite a few times, and Alabama was really excited to get him back to Tuscaloosa last weekend for the home opener. I expect him back in Tuscaloosa several more times this football season, and again for an official visit. So we'll see. But I don't think people need to give up on Conus Miller going to Alabama just yet. I think there's certainly a strong chance that they could end up signing him. But right now, Florida, Auburn, still probably a little bit ahead of Alabama, but Alabama's still right there, and I had to keep a very close eye on them because they definitely could be considered the dark horse for him.
As we continue to dive into the recruiting podcast portion of the BamaInsider.com podcast, going into the Colorado State game here with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com, our recruiting analyst, wanted to ask you this. Has the slow start of schools in Texas, like Texas A&M, Texas, helped Alabama with guys like Jalen Waddell and Bobby Brown?
Well, I think so. I think those are 2 of Alabama's premier targets. And they could be the #1 target at each position in terms of Bobby Brown, 4-star defensive lineman from Texas, from Arlington, Texas. I think that Alabama is probably at the top of Alabama's recruiting board in terms of defensive linemen. I mean, he is a major target for the Crimson Tide. They've recruited him extremely well, and I think they've certainly put themselves in a great position for him. Now they're fighting up against Texas A&M. They're fighting up against Texas for him, and I think the uncertainty right now at Texas A&M. I mean, if they continue to lose, I mean, I don't know if Kevin Sumlin is going to be able to hang on to that job, and that could cause a big effect for guys like Bobby Brown or Jalen Waddell. Jalen Waddell also very high on Alabama's recruiting board, big-time wide receiver target, was actually in Atlanta for the Florida State game. So he saw the Crimson Tide, going to Atlanta and beat Florida State 24-7, and he's going to be back in Tuscaloosa. Both of these guys are going to be announcing sometime in November, early November. And I think that Alabama's got a great chance with both those guys, and 2 guys who Alabama considers priority targets that they want really bad in this year's recruiting class. Can they get them away from the state of Texas? That's going to be the biggest thing. I think if both of them decide to leave Texas, it's going to be for Alabama. But it's just trying to get them away from the home state. And Alabama's been able to have a lot of success in Texas through the years, and I think they can. I think they certainly have a great chance of signing both of these guys.
What's the latest on Justin Ross? I mean, it seems like he might be trending towards Clemson right now. Alabama fans a little bit worried. Should they be? And what's the latest on Justin Ross, who's a big time target for Alabama?
Well, I think it's been an Alabama Clemson battle an Alabama Auburn battle from day one. Early on, it seemed like Auburn was the heavy favorite. Then it looked like all the momentum shifted towards Alabama. Alabama did sign his teammate Markel Benton in the 2017 class, and both of them are extremely close. Talk all the time, and Markel's certainly trying to recruit him to Tuscaloosa. He visited Clemson last weekend for the Auburn game, and you go to a visit like that in an atmosphere like that, you're going to come back with pretty high on that team. I mean, if you or I went to Clemson that weekend, we were probably going to come back pretty high, especially on the atmosphere, because it's certainly very electric, very fun. But I think a lot of kids, when they go on visits and go in those type of atmospheres, whether it's an Alabama and Auburn game or a Auburn Clemson or a Florida State, they're going to come back pretty high on the team that they visited. And I think Clemson's certainly a very strong competitor for Justin Ross right now, but I think it's a long way away before he makes a decision. I think in the end, it's going to come down to Alabama and Auburn for him. Of course, we'll have to wait and see, how the rest of Auburn's season goes. But Clemson has certainly put themselves strongly in the race for him, and it's probably a race between those three schools all the way until he gets ready to announce his decision. But I wouldn't say that, even though it may look like Clemson has taken the lead for him, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he just kind of came back really high on them after the visit, and a lot of people probably took it as, oh, well, he's favoring Clemson right now, and they're certainly in the race, but I think it's really a three-way tie right now.
As we close the recruiting portion, I just want to remind you that we are in a recruiting commitment watch for tomorrow, which is September 15th, and Vernon Jackson out of the Houston, Texas area. So we'll keep you posted on BamaInsider.com. Bone, before we let you go, wrote an article this week on that fans are failing to appreciate Jalen Hurts. Now, it's not all fans, but it seems to be a good, not majority, but a good amount of people not really appreciating what he's bringing to the table each weekend. What's your take on Jalen Hurts? I know you've followed Alabama football for many, many years, and I guess let's start out with this. Have all quarterbacks received this amount of criticism here at Alabama?
Well, I think there's always criticism if you don't perform as good as fans think you can perform. There's always going to be criticism, and you win every single game, but you lose a national championship game, there's going to be criticism, regardless of how fair or unfair it may be. I think Jalen Hurts had a fantastic freshman season, and I think a lot of people wanted to try to act like there was this intense competition coming down between Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, but there really wasn't. I mean, this is Jalen Hurts' team. He's a fantastic football player. He's going to continue to get better and continue to improve, and we've started to see that this football season. And with his playmaking ability, especially when a play breaks down, he's able to scramble and pick up an extra 15, 25 yards. It certainly helps the team, but I don't think you could ask for anyone really better at the position right now, and fans really need to appreciate that, because Alabama has had some interesting quarterbacks through the years, but this is kind of the last several years. Alabama's been lucky and fortunate, but they also haven't had a quarterback who's been able to come back really since A.J. McCarron. A.J. McCarron was a 3-year starter, and then you had a run of Blake Sims, Jake Coker, than Jalen Hurts. They really hadn't had a guy that has been able to come back and play, but now they have, and I think fans need to appreciate that, because you've got a guy that can be a starting quarterback at Alabama for 3 or 4 years. I think they need to appreciate that, and I think if he wins a national championship for them, they'll appreciate him a lot more.
Yeah, right. That usually silences the critics. What's your take on this weekend's game before I let you go?
I don't think it's going to be much of a competition. I think last week, coming off the Florida State week, I think a lot of the players are pretty fired up. Not fired up, but they just kind of went into the game. Hey, we just beat Florida State pretty bad in Atlanta. We can just go through the motions, and it was sloppy. Even though Alabama won 41-10, it was a sloppy game. They didn't really move the ball extremely well. I think we're going to see a difference in that this weekend. And now that the a few new guys are out there playing, we'll see some adjustments made, but I don't think it'll be close. I think what was it? 28, 29 points. I don't think Alabama will cover the spread this weekend, regardless of, I don't know what the score will end up being, but I expect Alabama to, win by, 30 points at least.
Good stuff, Andrew. For all our recruiting coverage on BamaInsider.com, go to BamaInsider.com, the front page. Look for the Alabama Recruiting Forum. Andrew's in there all the time. He'll answer all your questions. Got a great Q&A this week. So remember, we're on a recruiting watch, and we'll talk to you soon, Bone. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Okay, thanks, Kyle.
All right, now we're talking with Tony Sakalas of BamaInsider.com. Going into this Colorado State game, this Alabama team, they're favored by 23.5 points going in. Do you think that Alabama just comes in and drops the hammer on Colorado State this weekend?
I don't know. I mean, they seem to kind of drop the hammer on Fresno State. This will be a more competitive game, at least on paper. Colorado State has a really good passing attack, so that'll be interesting to see if how that will translate into the game. I think Alabama could theoretically come in and drop the hammer on most teams in the nation. It's really just going to depend on how fast of a start they're able to pull off. The attention to detail is something that Saban always talks about, and just early mistakes that, if they come out sharp, I think they have the ability to really hand it to Colorado State.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Colorado State will be a formidable opponent, and I'm really interested to see how Alabama's secondary fares, because quarterback Nick Stevens of Colorado State, he's thrown for over 300 yards in each of his first 3 games. Colorado State played a strange game kind of in week 0 when they beat Oregon State. They scored 58 points in that game.
Right, against a Pac-12 opponent. I don't know how great Oregon State's going to be this year, but
trash.
But it's still not like they beat a FCS opponent. I mean, there's talent on that Oregon State roster.
What was interesting is that the following week, Colorado State only scored 3 points against Colorado Buffs.
Yeah,
Buffs defense holding it down.
So maybe, but Colorado's I would imagine a way better team than Oregon State. So.
Oh yeah, Buffs are nasty. Talking with Tony Sakalas of Bama Insider. My name is Kyle Henderson of Bama Insider. Saturday, Alabama at 2-0 tries to continue to be undefeated this season as they take on Colorado State. As you know, Alabama ranked #1 in the coaches poll and the AP poll. We talked about a lot of different angles this week, and I wrote an article, and it was based on that people don't appreciate Jalen, and it's not all the Alabama fans. And then you wrote a follow-up piece that said that Jalen is confident that Saban has his back. It really feels like Nick Saban has so much confidence in Jalen, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think he's really happy with the job he's done. I mean, Alabama hasn't had very many explosive plays at any point in the offense. Really haven't had too many on the ground or in the air. Really, opposing defenses have been taking away explosive plays and giving Alabama those short yardage plays. And what Alabama is doing is they're just taking what the defense is giving them. That's kind of, I think, what Jalen and Saban's point is. he's doing exactly what Alabama wants him to do, you know.
Exactly.
And why, you know, I guess the counter argument to the people that think that Alabama should be taking these shots is why, you know. I mean, if the short pass is there, take the short pass, and I think that's kind of what Alabama's thinking. Whether or not that will allow them to be able to be prepared when they do need to take the long pass, I think that's what the other side of the argument has to say. I think that, you know,
that time will come. There'll be times when they're facing a 3rd and 17 or when it's a critical situation, and then we can talk about it. But until now, just like you're saying, I mean, Alabama is taking what the defense is giving them, and they're being super productive for the most part. The one area that I really want to see improve, and I would assume that Saban wants to, and Alabama fans as well, is the 3rd down efficiency. And that's one thing that we really haven't talked about with Saban. But against Florida State, 3 for 16 on 3rd downs, and then last week against Fresno State, surprisingly 4 of 10.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes to some of those longer passes. I mean, and you know, going back to a little bit on our previous, you know, discussion, playing devil's advocate, what happens if that first time where Alabama really needs to make some long passes comes, you know, at the end of the year against LSU? Will they be ready for it at that time? And that's the other side of the argument. I'm not sure what side of the argument I'm on. I think, you know, it's probably okay to take these short passes, but what do you think? I mean, like, do you think that they should kind of try to force that to get ready for it, or what?
I mean, no, you don't force something that doesn't need to be forced. You take it as it is, and I think, you know, if it comes down to this Saturday, if Alabama has to use the deep passing attack and they get into some sort of scoring shootout with Colorado State, they'll be able to do it. They have too much speed on the outside not to. I mean, guys like Robert Foster, has he even caught a pass this year? I don't think he's caught a pass.
No, he caught, I think, 2 last week. So,
but
yeah.
We all know what he can do vertical-wise, because he can stretch the field. Calvin Ridley, of course. I mean, he can stretch the field. Cam Sims is, you know, red zone problem just because he's 6'5", and then of course, you know, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs. So the deep ball can be there. Can Jalen deliver it? I mean, we'll see. I mean, there was a pass last week where he floated it. It should have been intercepted. It should have been 100%. The guy for Fresno just dropped it. I mean, it was a terrible catch on his end, and it worked out well for Jalen. And Alabama hasn't forced a turn, or hasn't came up with a turnover in 2 consecutive games.
Yeah, they haven't lost a turnover yet.
Yeah, they haven't lost a turnover. So I think the deep ball was there, but it's always interesting to talk about and to read people's reactions. Some guy emailed me today on the story that I wrote and said that I was crazy for writing the article because he felt that Jalen is really just succeeding because of the talent that's around him, and that if you were to take Jalen and put him on any other team, that he would fall flat on his face. So, that's what he said. He emailed me that, and I was thinking about this. I think this guy's wrong because, number one, Jalen, we know the type of players because we speak to him weekly. He's a person of character, so I think that is going to spill over to your other players on the team. And he's a playmaker. I mean, what's his record? 15-1?
As a starter, 16-1 in total games. Right? Isn't that right? Yeah.
And is that just because he's on Alabama?
According to this guy, it is.
Come on. But I mean, he was a freshman. He did what he did last year. Maybe, I mean, I think a lot of it was because of the defense last year. I mean, the defense was incredible.
That's kind of a flawed argument because
right?
I feel like anyone, if you take them off of Alabama, which is the number 1 team in the nation, is going to have less numbers. I mean, if you took Damian Harris or Najee Harris or Bo Scarborough off Alabama's team and put them on a, you know, I'm assuming we're putting them on a lesser team, or you know, a bad, maybe an Oregon State. I think maybe that's the argument he's making.
If you put Jalen Hurts on Oregon State, they beat Colorado State.
Ooh.
38-0. No, I'm just kidding.
Hot take. No.
I don't know. I'm just saying that I think you put Jalen on another team. Is he 15-1? No. But I think his production and his playing style is gonna spill over, and whatever team he's on, they're gonna be happy that they have him because he leads by example and he's a playmaker. I mean, his dual threat ability is incredible.
I don't remember the exact numbers from Tebow's Heisman year, but they weren't that much different than Saban's number. Not Saban. Hurts' numbers last year.
No, I saw that. That
was weird. Yeah,
as a freshman too.
As a freshman, so I mean.
And Tebow won the Heisman that year, right?
Yeah, I guess. I think that was the year. I kind of just looked at it in glance, but
I don't know. You could talk all day about this topic with Jalen. I mean, it's fun to talk about. It's fun to, get into the Talk of Champions forum and talk with the community members about it. The defense, I mean, they've allowed 7 points against Florida State and then 10 against Fresno. You think the defense? I mean, I'm not going to ask are they as good as last year because it's impossible. But from where they are right now going into Florida State, where do they need to improve?
I think they just need to get the linebackers figured out. I mean, it's kind of they had an up and down performance against Fresno State. They didn't generate a lot of pass rush, albeit Fresno State made it a priority to get the ball out quick, so there really wasn't too much of an opportunity. But they allowed Fresno State to probably move the ball a little bit better and break some tackles and do some things that were just a little bit sloppy. I think you're going to want to see a better performance from some of the linebackers. But, it was a lot of people's first start. I think, was it 4 defenders' first start last week? So, a few mishaps here and there is kind of going to be expected. I think what I'd be looking for is a more complete performance, a more error-free performance as you start getting players that have now got a game under their belt, or a start under their belt. Keith Holcomb had a good game, but, Jamie Mosley I thought was somebody that had good moments. And
Jamie Mosley had the best suit on.
He did have a good suit.
Jeez, that suit, it was like a three-piece suit.
He's been probably saving. This is the starting suit. You know what I'm saying? It's been in the back of the closet.
Pink with gray, and he looked incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see that he's coming along and he got an opportunity. And as he said, he's
somebody that could grow into that starting role with more experience. Raekwon Davis and Keith Holcomb are 2 people that have done really well. So. The pieces are there. It's just building that experience, building it up to what it can be.
You're listening to the BamaInsider.com podcast. Kyle Henderson and Tony Sakalas coming to you from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The Crimson Tide host Colorado State this weekend. Kickoff set for 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Kicking the ball back and forth right now with Tony, and we're just, talking odds and ends. We talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts. We talked a little bit about the defense. Tony, anything you want to bring up? You want to, start a topic. Let's go. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, geez, man, put me on the spot.
By the way, if you don't know Tony, he's our football team writer. Dude's a massive soccer fan.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why everyone tuned into this this podcast. It's for the Manchester United updates. Yeah, you come for the Alabama coverage, but you stay for the Manchester United sound bites, I guess. But no, I don't know. What's been your thought? I'm gonna throw the ball back into your court. You're the new person to Tuscaloosa.
I think the running game. For example, I posted on the message board today, who's going to have the most rushing yards this weekend? I'm going back to offense. And I'm really surprised that, Damian Harris doesn't have 100 yards. Or I think he might. He might have over 100 yards, just barely. Not in a game, but I think season total he does. Bo Scarborough doesn't. I think he has 71 yards, and then Najee Harris has 72 yards. And Jalen Hurts leads the team in rushing with over 200 yards. So, I'm just really surprised that Alabama hasn't quite featured a back. I know it's early in the season, but
I think Jalen will definitely lead the team in rushing this year. And that's not just based off of two games. Wow. I kind of think that he will probably lead the team in rushing.
In total?
In total rushing yards, yeah.
Last year he had 954.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think
he hit 1,000 this year?
I think he does hit 1,000.
He's on pace to hit 1,200.
Yeah, I think he could hit 1,000. At first, early on in the season, I thought maybe that they weren't going to use him as much in the running game, but it seems like they're using him similarly in the running game to what they did last year. If they're going to allow him to do that, I think he will get 1,000 yards on the ground. I think that he might be the leading back, just because I think that Alabama's going to spread the ball around. I think that the 1,000-yard rusher might not be something that's, 100-yard a game rusher might not be something that happens for many times with Alabama backs, because you might have somebody that has 80 and then 70, and then Jalen might also have 80, and that right there, that's a lot of rushing yards.
I think that for this weekend, I think this would be my game plan. I'm not a coach. I'm not qualified to be a coach, right? I'm barely qualified to be on this podcast. However, I would say that give the ball. I would say this: Alabama's going to run the football a lot more against Colorado State because Colorado State's going to try to air it out the whole game. So you want to the way you utilize that is you run the ball. You play time of possession football, and Damian Harris is going to get the rock. And I'm really surprised that he hasn't got that. Alabama hasn't just been like, here, Damian, you're the guy for the first and second quarter because you look the best, and then we're gonna close out the game with our two big backs in Bo and Najee. I mean, I don't.
Did you see some of Najee's runs at the end of the game?
They were incredible.
That was amazing. He had some big play potential. He looks like a galloping horse
to Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, I see it, big back. I think he's more agile than Marshawn.
I think he has. I would agree because he has that power, but
maybe Adrian. I know it's such a cop out, but Adrian Peterson for me. I think that kind of like
that's not bad, Tony.
Kind of especially when he runs in the open field. He's a tall, bigger back. Adrian can move, or he could. He's gotten a little bit older, but
I don't know.
He's somebody that I think that's what I see.
I think that's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw a lot of that from him last week. I mean, just the way that. He can get side to side, get upfield.
How about this? I'm working on a feature with his head coach. He actually says it's kind of cheating because it's not a real person. He says he calls him a bigger Barry Sanders.
Whoa.
So imagine like Adrian Peterson with Barry Sanders' capability.
I don't know. I hate to disagree with the coach. I just don't think he's like a Barry Sanders.
Well, a bigger Barry Sanders. Like we're changing the game. We're like doing a creative player on Madden.
Barry Sanders, no, you can't. I mean, I don't like that comparison. I like the first comparison. I don't like the Barry Sanders comparison. But he's his coach, so I don't know.
Bigger Barry Sanders.
Bigger Barry Sanders. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to get his opportunity. I think, okay, you want a hot take? Here's this.
Hot take alert.
I think that Najee Harris is Alabama's best running back today on Alabama football's roster.
That's probably like a warm take, man.
Is that warm?
I think it's warm.
There's a lot of people think that.
I mean, you watch the kid run and look at his size and look at the ability that he can do.
Why isn't he starting? You put the best on the field.
Maybe. I think a lot of it's dependability. I think you look at, you mentioned Damian Harris. He's somebody that's been dependable. You know he's going to get the job done. You know he's not going to get rid of the rock.
And Damian's looked excellent this season.
Yeah, he's not going to let go of the ball. He's somebody that's going to be, he can do everything. He can block. I don't know how. I haven't seen Najee block out of the backfield, but that's something that Damian can do.
Yeah, he can really do it all.
Yeah, and he's a veteran, and he's been in these situations. I think that's why he gets a lot of the carries, and he's also good too. I mean, Najee might have the most talent. I mean, it's kind of like you kind of almost expect that from the number one overall recruit. It's somebody that's going to come in and have instantly one of the best talents on the team. But I think that as of right now, maybe the more experienced back, the more dependable back might be Damian Harris. But if you're going to go with like the quote unquote best back or the most talented back, yeah, that probably is Najee right now.
What's crazy is we sit here and we talk about Damian Harris, Bo Scarborough, Najee Harris, and Alabama has Josh Jacobs and Brian Robinson also on the roster.
Yeah,
those two haven't even played.
Jacobs might see his debut this week, and I'd be interested to see if they test out that hamstring. I don't know. I don't know if this is the week they're going to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a cup of coffee, basically. He had maybe 3-4 carries just to get him in, get the wheels turning, get him ready for SEC play. There's no need to play him.
You could wait this week and play him against Vanderbilt.
Well, let's go down to injury. Rashawn Evans, play or no?
No.
Anthony Jennings, play or no?
No.
Josh Jacobs, play or no?
Play.
Lester Cotton, play or no?
Play.
I don't know about that one. I think I agreed with you with everyone but Lester Cotton.
What's wrong with Lester Cotton?
The rumor is this is unconfirmed by anyone on the Alabama staff, but that I think that ding was maybe a concussion. I think that's why they don't know if he might have cleared, but it might be something.
Saban got a little heated when
he definitely
they asked him yesterday. So usually when people come to defense like that, it's because there's a little something behind it. Usually.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Saban said that he practiced, but
he practiced, then he practiced again.
He was at practice, but and we only see what we were able to see, but he didn't practice when we were there. He was off to the side. A lot of times he had his helmet off. At one point he walked up to the line and they told him to, not to go. And we saw Matt Womack at right guard. We saw Jedrick Wills at right tackle. At one point during individual drills, we saw Joshua Casher at right guard. So I think we also saw Womack at right guard, and then also Scott Lashley at right tackle for like a rep or two.
What? I rewatched the game as everybody did after Fresno State. There was a couple times that Lester Cotton surprisingly got beat.
Really? Yeah. See, I mean, I have to dig down deep and watch that.
No, there was a couple times where Fresno State came off hard and got right past him and got some heat on Jalen, which, as Saban has talked about, has caused Jalen to escape the pocket faster than they wanted him to, rather than sitting back there to go through his progression because he's been have to take off.
I don't know. I mean, I know the staff is supposedly really high on Jedrick Wills, so maybe this is an opportunity that why would you risk? Maybe this is the thought. Maybe don't risk Cotton if he's at all injured. Get Wills that playing time that he might need. Give him an opportunity to kind of prove himself, and then kind of evaluate where you're at from there.
And then since Matt Womack is already the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, he can.
Who would have at the beginning of the season?
Anywhere.
At the beginning of the season, who would have guessed first offensive lineman to win Offensive Lineman of the Week, Matt Womack? That's good for him, I think people were ready to write him off before the season even started.
And I think you said this earlier in the week. Can you imagine him at guard, 6'7"?
That's
like 315.
I was surprised that it wasn't the other way around with Wills playing right guard.
Wills has more of a guard frame.
Yeah, or it's more like Womack's frame almost just screams tackle. You know what I'm saying? But whatever works. Maybe Womack's more comfortable or more experienced at multiple positions.
Maybe Womack just said, "I'm playing guard this week. Who's gonna stop me?"
I'm 6'7".
Yeah, what are you gonna do? Right? I mean,
but
no, I think either way you spin it, Alabama's offensive line, has looked very solid on the left side. Bradley Bozeman,
well, I was going to ask
in the business.
You said you looked at the offensive line. Jonah Williams, I think one of the underreported things is maybe he's not doing quite as perfect as people thought he was going to do at that left tackle position. That's hard.
Yeah.
You mentioned the left side. I think that maybe he's not, I think everyone just expected him to just come into that left tackle position and just dominate the way, that Cam Robinson did. But that's tough. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, and I think that he still has some room to grow.
And he's younger, too, isn't he? He's a sophomore, right?
Right. Well, Cam had done that. Cam had worked at the tackle position all 3 years he was here. But I think that's really hard to do. And this is not a knock against Jonah Williams. I'm just saying, I think some people are taking for granted how hard that is to make the move from right tackle to left tackle as a sophomore and just be expected to be perfect all the time. There's parts on that left side, too, that still need some work as well. It's not only the right side, because if it was only the right side, then, Offensive Player of the Week, Matt Womack wouldn't be Offensive Player of the Week, Matt Womack. So, but yeah, there's improvement that's needed all around. I don't think it's cause for panic yet on the offensive line, but I do think that there's definitely some room for improvement, and that once that happens, you might see some of those explosive plays.
Saban on Wednesday night got pretty fired up when a reporter asked him if Tua Tagovailoa would see time, and wanted to get your take on that because
it's the question we all want to know.
It is, but I want to ask you this from not from a Tua game plan perspective, but from a media perspective, because you're in the room, you ask questions, you're in it every day. People don't know what it's like to be in the room, so I mean, talk about the relationship, if any, that Saban has with the legit media that's in there weekly.
So, I'll break down what happened there. Saban said that there was no new injuries to report, which he was obviously skating over a few injuries. I mean, not going to give an update on Lester Cotton or Josh Jacobs. I mean, there's obviously at least something to report there. So he was asked about Lester Cotton, which he kind of got. You could see the flame starting right there. Then he was asked
smoldering.
Then he was asked about Josh Jacobs. He wasn't even asked about Dylan Moses, who we haven't seen at practice yet. And we don't even know what's wrong with Dylan Moses. But he's asked about those two players, and then he got a repeat question from one of the reporters that had asked him about Lester Cotton, and that question was about Tua Tagovailoa's playing time. At that point, Saban had enough. He's like, why don't I just give away my whole game plan? Which, I mean, I don't think saying whether or not you're going to play Tua Tagovailoa is going to really sway the balance of this game. But maybe to Saban, he felt like he had already given away too much. But he certainly didn't take exception to that question.
Do you feel that Saban disrespects the media, being in like the media realm? Because when I post this video on the Bama Insider account, people are like, "Oh, he disrespects the media. He doesn't like the media." Is it like that?
I don't think he disrespects the media. I think everything he knows what he's doing. It's very calculated. I think you notice that, I guess, mini rant, if you even want to call that a rant.
I haven't been around for a true rant yet, right?
I mean, that was an okay rant, I guess.
But that wasn't like a nuclear.
But you notice it was the last question, and he knew it was the last question. I think he likes to sometimes go off with a bang.
I loved how he just walked out. It was like mic drop, and he just like exited stage left. I mean, I think, and he did talk about Tua last week, so I could see kind of where the question was coming from. But like game planning, of course, coaches are gonna always deter from talking about that.
Oh, there's nothing wrong with the question. I don't even think Saban thinks that there's anything wrong with the question. It's just took an opportunity. He was already a little frustrated. I think he just, to be honest, wanted to end with a bang a little bit, and just kind of took a shot.
And I think getting people fired up too, because he did mention that in the press conference that he'd like to see the crowd at Bryant-Denny get into this game a little bit. I mean, this is my first game in Tuscaloosa this last weekend, and against Fresno State, and I don't think it was very loud at all. I mean, there was really no need to be. I mean, I think the crowd got a little bit up when Jalen broke that touchdown run, but I'm sure it's going to get much louder as the games get of higher intensity. So maybe, he's trying to, spark a little something here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, what would be a really cool way to get the fans fired up is to schedule a home and home with a big time opponent.
Yep.
No, but in all seriousness, I think the fans will be as fired up as you can be about Colorado State. Yeah, I mean, it's not, as you like to say, the sexiest opponent, but I mean, this is another opponent that's in their way, and Alabama has to beat them. I mean, you have to win nearly every single game in college football. People know that. Saban knows that. Alabama knows that. And being a 23.5 favorite against Colorado State doesn't mean anything until the game is won on the scoreboard. So, I guess we'll close on that. We won't keep you too long on the podcast, but for all the post-game coverage, we will have you covered on BamaInsider.com. We got exclusive written articles, we got video, we got press conference videos, we got the podcast, which we'll do another podcast after. We got a new intern we're bringing on board. Tyler Waldrop.
Yeah, so
good kid. He's a graduate student at Alabama, so we're excited to bring him on. He's somebody that I've known for a while too. He's a pretty good kid and an excellent journalist as well. So he's going to be a good addition to our game day staff.
Adding to the arsenal.
Yeah.
For your benefit, the listener. So please continue to subscribe to the podcast and to YouTube, and of course to BamaInsider.com. For Kyle Henderson and Tony Sakalas from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is the BamaInsider.com podcast.